Here. Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are. I know we have people all over the globe here. So welcome to the Unwired webinar. Today's topic is from PDF to digital form in minutes. And we are going to discuss how to auto-generate forms using AI. Our speaker today is our CTO, Srini Subramanian. And with that, let's get the housekeeping notes out of the way. We will be recording this webinar, so for those who registered, missed, and attended, you will get a recording of this. We will also have a live Q&A at the end, but also please feel free to put in your question and answers at the Q&A box. We will address them at the end of the session, and again at the end of the session we'll open up the line so you can even ask us, orally. We do want to highlight a couple of offers we have for all our attendees today. The first one is a try it yourself offer. So we will enable you to do a free trial where you can generate forms using AI yourself. So, and the second offer is if you want us to, to build a form for you, send us your PDF or a paper document, a spreadsheet, and we will make it digital for you at no cost. So again, please take us up on our offer. We would love to collaborate with you. All right. Let's have a quick look at the agenda today. What we will discuss over the next 30 to 40 minutes will be, what is the business problem that we are addressing here, right? The fact is that paper is still the bottleneck, and we'll discuss that. And there have been, already a couple of approaches how to solve this problem, right? Making paper forms digital, automating paper-based processes is not new. But the need today is a better way to do that. And therein comes the AI promise, and that is the crux of the webinar today. We'll be discussing how AI can help you not only build forms, we'll also discuss even the other pillars, like workflow and user. We'll also share with you those details. And just to put things in context, while it is great to digitize a form, use AI, and now you have a digital form, that's only part of the process, because most of you would probably want to collect that data on the digital forms and then perhaps add an approval step. Perhaps you're taking a picture, you need to send the data to SharePoint or send the data to your ERP systems like SAP. So Unvired Turbo Forms application is the foundation on which you can do all of that. And today's topic, the Unvired AI Form Designer, is at the front end of that, right? You can digitize those forms so easily now, but the Turbo Forms application enables you to complete all those other steps we talked about. We'll talk about that also. And then we'll show you the roadmap that we have. Yes, the AI Form Designer is the first step we are taking to enable you to auto-generate forms, but then there is the whole workflow generation using AI, right? The approval workflow, for example. Then there is the user aspect of it, guiding the user to giving them contextual information, autofilling of forms, just making it easier. Because when you're out there on the field, you want to make it as easy for users to fill forms. And then there is finally the reporting AI aspects of this whole solution, which is giving you, user insights, creating dashboards, and those BI related features. So we'll also discuss the roadmap we have there, and we'll do the Q&A. Of course, at any time you can share your questions, and at the end. So before we dive into the meat of the discussion, let me share a quick overview on Unvired. Our mission is to reinvent business workflows with data, AI, and connected worker solutions. We are a Houston headquartered company and a SAP-Partner. Our other partners are Google, Microsoft, and Claude. We provide about 5 different pillars, 5 different types of solutions. Our big focus is the connected worker solution, where we have built apps for inspections, work orders, safety, work permits. We have the digital forms application, which we are going to discuss today. We've built a lot of custom AI agents that integrate with SAP and other systems. And of course, building mobile and web apps is how we started our journey. And then we also have a strong data modernization practice, where we have worked with customers, modernize data platforms like Microsoft Fabric, and optimizing semantic models and using Power BI. But with that, let's dive into today's discussion. The topic today is how do we use AI to really automate paper-based processes? That is the big picture. And we worked with customers, and yes, they have SAP, they have Salesforce, they have deployed dozens of mobile applications, but in each of our customers, we find that paper is still being used. Maybe it's in the warehouse, maybe it's in the field. And these are some of the use cases are for inspections, checklists, safety. So we find people still using a lot of paper. And also the fact is that systems like SAP, for example, and Salesforce, they are not geared towards storing some of the data that forms collect. And so there is that gap there. And so digital forms is a nice way to fill that gap, where you can now digitize that last mile. And the problem is not how to solve this problem. That has been solved, and we'll discuss that how. The problem is how can we make digitizing paper forms easier than before. So with that, let's look at how we and other people have solved the problem so far. The traditional process, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and we have done this a lot, was developing these forms using coding, right? HTML, Angular. So it was heavy code driven of building of these forms. Then came about 2 or 3 years ago a low code, no code approach. And Unwired itself, we have our own, low code form builder, which makes it easier, right? There's no coding needed. A business analyst can create those forms using drag and drop. But then came AI a couple of years ago, and that's where it takes us to the AI promise, where it's so much easier now to build these digital forms and also do other things which Srini will talk about. So the idea here is what we will be showing today to you is how you can just feed a PDF to an LLM while like a Claude, and create that form. And what I want to stress is, though we show Claude today, you can use any LLM. We can use Google Gemini or ChatGPT, whatever your enterprises are using. So with that, I'm going to request our CTO to take us through the discussion, and more importantly, do the demo after this. Srini?
Yep. Thanks, Alok. So what I want to cover briefly on this slide is what AI can do for this whole form design process, right? And then we will quickly jump into the demo and then try and share some details of how the whole thing is working after that. Like Alok mentioned, what we actually have is a drag and drop designer. So typically when you have your paper-based forms or your PDFs, uh, there's a business analyst or a designer basically sitting, going through that and then trying to reimagine the form in how it needs to look like when you're kind of doing that online, right? Compared to maybe fitting it out on the PDF, and then designs the form, which probably takes, I don't know, 2 hours, 4 hours, or maybe a day. And so you look at the different sections you need, and do this manually. But the process is easier because you do have a drag and drop builder and allows you to do certain validations, et cetera, in a fairly simple way. Now, what LLMs have really brought in here is, number one, these PDFs don't need to be manually, kind of translated, right? You can actually have the LLM or the AI piece there really looking at interpreting the form and giving you something that can be programmatically then converted. At Unwired, what we've also done is built an MCP service that we use along with our form builder or the form designer, and works hand in hand to take this digital representation of the form and then convert it to what we call the turbo form, right? Now, it's not just a faithful rendition of the form, but what you also get are certain validations, and the LLM does a great job at trying to figure out, based on your paper form or the PDF, how potentially it needs to look like. So if you have fields which are dependent, the LLM can guess that, and then we can actually kind of trigger that within the digital form. You can also have fields getting enabled, disabled, or made mandatory, which is required or not required or optional, based on certain conditions within the form, and we're going to look at all of that, right? Having said that, let me now jump directly into the demo. So like Alok mentioned, what I'm going to do today is to actually try and take you through the AI generation piece using Claude AI, right? While we're doing this demo based on Claude, what we also have, I mean, this can as well be used with either ChatGPT or Gemini or any of these agents. And in addition, what we are already having currently, kind of beta, is the whole thing built into the web application itself. That is something we can probably talk about a little bit more later when we look at the roadmap and the rest of the things. So is my screen visible, Alok?
No, right now it's my screen, I guess.
Yes, really, I can see it. It's visible.
Okay.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Let me turn on my video to keep this focused. And so what you're basically seeing on screen is the Turbo Apps Builder or the Turbo Forms application, which allows you to do the drag and drop designer, right? That we were talking about. Now, what I'm also going to use today is Claude. And effectively, what we will do is 2 or 3 cycles, depending on how long it takes. One is I will basically, generate a couple of forms completely based on prompting, like how you would normally do. And then the other one will also take an example of how we can just simply upload a PDF form and get it directly converted. In the interest of time, I'll also show you a few forms that I already used a PDF and converted before the webinar. So we can take a look at the PDF and then also look at the form that was created. So let's take a very simple example for let's say, design a contact form or keep the required fields to use. So all we're doing is trying to ask the LLM to design this. Now you did notice that I started off by saying design a contact form, and then I changed that to design a contact turbo form. The reason is that a form is a very common word. So if you just say form, it's possible that Claude doesn't pick up the tool that we use for designing forms and just goes out and then builds something else. But the moment we do use the keyword turbo form, then it picks it up that needs to work with our tool. So all we're trying to do is, the tool that we use, and you will see that a little later, can also be embedded in, a SharePoint website or your public website, etc. So all we're trying to do is to say, hey, design a simple contact form, right? And and then we will see how that is rendered. And subsequently, I'll also show it to you on the tool itself to see how the design works. Now, what happens behind the scenes as the tool starts working is we have what's called the Model Context Protocol, right? The MCP service. This basically interfaces the agent with the backend system, which is our Turbo Forms or the Turbo Apps Builder, and allows you to then create these forms in a format that is understood by the tool and rendered. So what you see is a very simple form out here. So typically it takes the name, email, phone optional, everything else optional. And you see that the form is fairly quickly generated because it was a very simple one. Let me switch to the tool. We can just do a reload and you'll see that there's a contact us form that was just created a minute ago. Now this is the builder, the no-code builder that you actually see on screen. Now what you have is a bunch of controls that you can use and then drag and drop. So earlier what we used to do was if you needed to design a form, then we used to use the designer to basically drag and drop fields. What you're now seeing is to get a quick start by actually designing the basic form using the AI, and then you can tweak it once you're inside. You can also check the preview and you will see that it's a faithful rendition of what you saw there, right? A very simple form. Let's try and make this a little more interesting. Let me switch to, okay. That is, in the interest of time, I do have a prompt that I already made. Copy that and then I'll explain. What I'm trying to do is to create something that our customers do most of the time, which is to create a simple form to create a notification in SAP. Now, Alok mentioned that we do have a no-code workflow development platform behind this. So you can actually interface with any system based on REST APIs or a database, but we also interface with SAP pretty well. And therefore, it allows you to create notification on the SAP plant maintenance side. So all I'm saying is please create a turbo form to create a notification. And to keep it simple, I'm just saying date time, location, and then just create an equipment dropdown, right? And typically you would actually have the dropdown getting filled with values from the SAP system. But in this case, I'm just saying, please add a few values. And then I also want to capture pictures, and therefore, add pictures, the control to, grab pictures using the camera on the phone or the web. Now, similar to what you saw last time, unlike the contact form, in this particular case, I'm actually saying what kind of fields that I want, which is, the date time for current, the location, equipment nodes, etc. So the builder goes ahead and then starts figuring out the schema. It looks into how the form needs to look like, and then goes ahead and then creates that. Now, what you would also see as part of this is how do you end up trying to modify this. So let's assume that this is what we wanted, but we actually missed out something, which is we want to have a severity, right? That's a radio button, and I want to have a bunch of values out there, and then based on certain values of the user's choice, right, whether it's very high or high, I actually want to make the photo that is being captured mandatory, right? And then keep it optional for the other two values. So what I'm trying to show in this case is it's not just a simple design of the form where you have a bunch of controls, but you can also embed certain business logic into that using a prompting mechanism. So what we are saying is add another radio button control, and if the user chooses a very high or a high, then what you're seeing is to make it, mandatory in that particular case. Okay, sorry. Now, sometimes you do see that, let's go back here, refresh this and see if the actual work was done. Okay, let's go back to the prompt. So I have, looks like I'm hit by the demo virus. So let's try this again. Let's try this again and let's see. Now, while this runs, let me show you something else that I wanted to do, which is I do have a bunch of PDF documents out here, right? Let me open one of them. Okay, so you see this is basically an OCR form, right? Because it's not really something that has been typed in, but it's actually a scan. And you can see that some of that is faint, and although it's a very simple form, it's still not very legible. Now, if you actually go back to the generated version of this, I think it's called the Firewatch checklist. So you'll see that it's a fairly good rendition of what we looked at, right, in terms of the actual content. Now, the way we handle the PDF definition is there are two options, right? You can actually let Claude itself perform the analysis and then do the conversion and try the creation of the form. But to keep this a little more within our control, what we actually do is to handle the entire conversion also within the platform. So Claude doesn't do the job there, but we actually pick up the PDF and then we do the conversion ourselves. Let's see if this time it worked. Okay, there we go. Hopefully we should have this in place. Okay, we can also try and move these fields up and down. So when I now click on very high, you do see that the asterisk comes up here to say that it's kind of mandatory. But the moment I make it medium or low, you would see that the photo is not necessary or a required field anymore. So these kind of conditions which are built into the forms builder is actually stuff that you can now control using a prompt, right? Let's take the PDF example that I've been speaking about, I guess, which is of more interest. So what do we do? Let's take one of the documents I have here, which is a simple one. I just downloaded off the internet, right? I think it was a work permit. So attached PDF of a work permit, create a. Now you'll immediately notice that this process of conversion of a PDF, or it could be like Alok said, an Excel or maybe a Word document, is something that is going to take much longer than the typical process. It could be 2 minutes to 3 minutes, depending on the traffic on the Anthropic side. So what happens is primarily the system uploads the PDF to our system, and then we go ahead and then do the digital representation of that form. In this particular case, what you're seeing, we're still calling the Anthropic API, but it could also be an Azure Document Intelligence or Google. You could even use the open source LLMs. That's completely within the platform's configuration and control. So once the digital form of the PDF is available, then the LLM or the agent starts working on that. So when we look at Claude, right, what is the benefit that we get is all of you might have heard of the term harness, right? The agent which does the job of, okay, I have received the definition, now I need to create the turbo form. I have a bunch of tools which I can use for that. So what are the tools I need to call? At what stage do I use which tool, so on and so forth, is all controlled by what typically the technical term is harness, but you can also look at it simply as an agent. We have two choices: either use something that an Anthropic or an OpenAI is providing, which is what we're trying to do in this particular demo, right? But the other option is, once it's available within the tool, you then have the choice of which LLM to use, and the harness is completely what Unvired provides within the Turbo Forms application itself. So in that particular case, you would see the entire process running within the web app. Now, the only difference between the two approaches, in this particular case, you have a $20 account like what I have, and I'm basically using the same tokens that are possible as part of that. So the entire conversion process, the translation process, all of this is handled within this particular tool itself. I'm not having any additional cost to bear. The moment we look at our system trying to do that, then you would have to probably put in an API key and then end up incurring costs, which is based on the number of tokens that are used. Now, remember, these are fairly simple forms that we're trying to convert. Simple in the sense that it's a straightforward definition. It's not something that is very complicated in terms of what the LLM needs to process. So it's probably anywhere from a few cents to maybe $1 at most when you look at slightly more involved forms with 3 or 4 pages, etc. Okay, so now the whole thing is churned, and then you do get a rendering. What you also see here, which is being rendered as part of this process, is again a Turbo Forms embedding application that you're seeing, which is visible within Claude. Now let me open up the PDF just so you get an idea. We are done. Sorry, let me look at what we wanted to, what we are trying to convert. I think it was this one. Yeah. So there's a hot work permit, and then there's a bunch of instructions and a simple form that was there as part of this. Right now, let's look at what the end result has been. So you have the hot work permit. Let me go to the preview. So this is something I downloaded off the DFW airport site. So you do have the name, number, etc. Everything has come in, and then you have the instructions organized into nice little sections. Now, what you might see straight away is that I did not actually give any instructions other than saying, hey, just convert this, right? And it also comes in with the required signatures, etc. I'll also show you a couple of forms where there are certain conditions which are also automatically determined. Now, it took a couple of minutes to actually generate this, but as you can see, I didn't have to do any manual intervention to actually get this thing done. Now, once the form has been designed in the current form, if you feel that there is something to do, it's fairly simple then, for you to try and tweak it by maybe moving it around, right? So that you have the uh, layout being a little bit more, organized to your design requirements compared to what the tool did for you. But net, what you actually see is an output which is straight away coming from what the conversion was. I want to show you the other use case which I mentioned. So let me switch back to the PDF there. So let's look at, let's look at this particular one. But I have a bunch of required equipment on this side, and then you do have an yes, no, and then there's again a hazard identification, etc. This is what's called a safe work permit. So let's go back, and I had done this some time ago. So now comes the interesting part. I use the same prompt that you saw, right? And we can actually look at that. Let's go back, converting. Okay, let's look at this. Was it this one? Okay, this is the cold work permit. But more or less, what you will see is, again, right, the same kind of prompting that I'm using just to convert the attached work permit. Now, here's the interesting part. What you see is, the simple yes/no choices, and then you also see the conditions that are now brought in. So if you look at the actual form, let's do that again, and you'll see that there is a not applicable here, and then there is a comment below. Now, the design has automatically figured out that, hey, since this is not ticked, I keep the comment, but the moment I select that it's not applicable or known on fire, then I don't need to fill it. Likewise, you would see this here, right? The moment I check that, all the options go away. And this is something that you can't really achieve in a PDF or in a paper form, right? And then you also have the other instances where you can make a field mandatory, it is required, so a comment needs to be filled in if it's a particular value, et cetera, et cetera. Most of these things are automatically determined by the system, and you can still add. So required safety equipment, let's look at that before we proceed. So you do have that there's a tick, and then there's something where people are signing off, right? So the tool does it a lot better. That since I did this, actually it now takes who did the checking of the required safety equipment. So you do get a little more of what we call as an interactive form rather than just the static form as per the PDF. So that's basically what I wanted to quickly do in terms of two forms that we created using prompts. Then there was another form that I just dragged and drop, put in a PDF, and allowed the system to convert. And similarly, I had built out a few forms in the interest of time, like I said, and those are these particular forms, right? Where you have this work permits, the inspection templates, etc. So it really doesn't matter what kind of a form you have, whether it's an OCR form, which means it's an image that was scanned, maybe from a print, or it's a really properly designed, PDF form. It really doesn't matter for the system. Although I did the demo with PDFs, you might have as well used an Excel or a Word document, for example, and it would have done the same conversion. Can we have the slides again, Alok? I can.
Yeah, Srini, sure. Yeah, let me go here. Let me know when you see the slides again.
Yes, I do. Maybe you can switch to slideshow. Yeah.
Yeah, let's go here. Okay.
Yeah. So when you look at the solution itself, what I was showing you was just primarily the modeler. But what we have behind that is not just to build forms, but we have something we call as workflows. These are workflows or flows, as you might say, something very similar to, I'm sure, what all of you are familiar with in terms of, Power Apps from Microsoft, right? So you can set up no code flows to kind of, for example, call a REST API, or we also support an interface to SAP. So you basically drag and drop the node, and then you just need to set up a configuration, which RFC or BAPI to call, or an OData service, and then you're good to go. So these flows and integrations really form the backbone of the forms that you were designing. Hey, it's good to capture a permit, but once you're done with that, the data probably needs to sit in a system where you can actually audit it, track it, trace it, and then use it for analytics, right? What were the faults reported, so on and so forth. And that's where the flows and the integrations come in. The other thing to mention here is these forms. I unfortunately didn't show that to you, but we can take a look at it again. They're responsive by design, so you don't need to really choose to design something for mobile or web. It automatically, does that. And then, of course, the application itself, which is a companion app we provide with this, works in an offline first model. What I mean by that is forms get downloaded to your mobile app, and then you can actually work without connectivity. Fill them out, hold the data within there, collect all the pictures and other information that you require. And then once you're back in connectivity, it automatically sends it. This becomes critical because in the field, many times you're working in zones where maybe there's no Wi-Fi or maybe there's patchy connectivity. So the offline model is really useful there. How we achieved it, like I said, is completely based on an MCP-enabled tool set that we have as part of the Forms platform. And that is what the LLM or the different agents are able to connect to and then, work with it. It's completely model agnostic. So, some forms you may get better results with the Claude, with an Anthropic. Maybe some others work better with an OpenAI. But in general, we've seen that whether it's, the open weight models that are available today, or the Google Gemini or the OpenAI GPT models or Anthropic, they all give you fairly comparable results. Okay, next slide.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah. This is something interesting. I want to spend a few minutes on this, and I think we're planning to have a follow-up session on this in a few weeks. The Turbo Forms application that you've been seeing so far, right? We have the designer. I spoke about the offline first application and all of that. But the story doesn't end there because we believe that Forms is something that you could potentially use in a standalone fashion using the companion app. But the majority of the use cases are probably going to be where it is embedded into an existing application. A very good use case of this is our EAM application that we have to do your maintenance, work orders, rounds, etc. The TurboForm solution is actually embedded within that to handle inspections. Now, the benefit you have is forms are therefore customizable. They can be designed, they can be changed on the fly based on what your need is. So if you want to collect additional data, you can go ahead and then put that in, and then the form would be downloaded to the device, and your application automatically now starts accepting the additional data. You're actually not changing any code anywhere in the system, right? You're just designing the form and then making it available. So this whole embedding mechanism is something that works brilliantly with our applications and with potentially your custom applications. Can be embedded in web apps for an online experience. Can also be embedded into your mobile apps, like maybe built on a React Native or a PWA, or even Flutter or other platforms, right? So the embedding capability comes with the platform that you saw so far, and an additional SDK that allows you to basically get it running fairly quickly within your system. And you get all the other bells and whistles that come with the platform, which means you still get the ability to integrate with SAP and other systems. Yeah, you can still connect it to any REST API, OData, or directly into a database. The only thing we're changing is where the data is collected, right? And that, instead of being a companion app, basically becomes your application.
Okay.
I guess this last slide, we want to talk about some of the other AI capabilities that exist across the whole forms data capture, right? Because this is one of the most often used use cases in any enterprise, I guess, which is you do have a bunch of forms, you collect a lot of data. So we looked at how we can build. In a subsequent webinar, we want to show you how you can actually use this to integrate and post it to the backend systems that I've been talking about, right? SAP or any other for that matter. And that's the flow generator. Right now, it's a no-code tool, which is a drag and drop designer, but we're currently in a stage where we have that also available as an AI-enabled module. But two other interesting use cases which affect the end users and potentially people who are looking at this data is one is AI-assisted form filling. So some interesting use cases here are, let's say you're doing an inspection and you want to have historical data. Hey, based on the past, what are the values that have been taken for this particular measurement. So you can actually project that if the user is entering a 50 or a 40 or whatever that number is, based on historical data, the AI can actually tell you whether that's falling within the pattern that's already been seen, or it is an anomaly. Now, this is not something that needs to come later, but can be done online as the user is filling by saying, hey, this particular value is a deviation, so can you maybe collect some more data out of it? You can also use it to pre-fill the form with data from the previous visit so that the user only needs to change what is really different compared to the last visit. So in a preventive maintenance model, this works well in terms of trying to determine what the deviations are that the user can record, while at the same time speeding up the whole process, right? Similarly, there's AI analytics, which people in the office or the central office can probably use, or the planners. For example, if you're looking at notifications, so you can look at, what are the notifications that have been created in the last month? What are the equipment which are most liable for failure, right? How many notifications are being reported? How many actually getting converted to work orders? Any of that data that you're collecting, you can actually use a chat interface and free-flowing queries rather than trying to find out, which table and which Power BI report I need to go and hunt. You can actually start asking questions like what you do with a bunch of other tools today. You can do the same here. Get trends, get actual data that is sitting behind the forms that were collected.
Okay.
So we have these four different pillars, and I think this was the last slide, right, Alok?
Yeah. Yeah, I can take this. So again, as I mentioned in the beginning, we have demoed Claude, but you can use any LLM, any LLM of your choice, ChatGPT, Gemini, it's all coming. We're working on that. And before we move to Q&A, just a reminder that we are offering, two offers today. One is send us your PDF or any form, paper form, Word document. We'll make it digital for you. And if you want to try this for yourself, let us know. We will enable you the access to the Unwired Claude connector, and you will be able to build these forms using AI yourself. So Sushil, let's open it up for questions, and maybe I'll hand it over to you, Sushil.
Sure. Thanks, Alok. So the first question that we have, let me just open the chat box. How to integrate Turbo Form to auto creation of SAP notification?
Okay. So, like I said, what we have is a flow builder. Maybe let me just take a minute to actually show that. Sushil, I'm going to grab your screen again. Okay. Okay, so let's assume that I go back. I hope you guys can see my screen. Let's assume I go back to this SAP notification screen, and you see this flows here, right? So I can actually create a flow, and the flow, okay, I need to publish the form, but effectively, let me open something that's already there. What the flow can be used for, and I just wanted to show you this primarily. You can see that it is a form action flow. Let's assume I choose that. I can do it on completion of the form. So effectively, what we are saying is when a form is completed, then please run this flow, right? And then let's open one of the flows. And then you will see the no-code builder, right? And what you have here, if you look at adding a node, you would see that you get the SAP node. So effectively, you can choose which SAP system you're looking at, right? I don't have it added here, but you can choose the system. You can then actually use any RFC or BAPI that is already there, or you can also hook it up to an OData system. So when the form gets completed and submitted, the flow runs automatically and then goes ahead and then creates this notification for you in SAP. It's as simple as that. And the interface can be, like I said, using either an RFC, a BAPI, or maybe even an OData system. So these no-code flows, the parallel I can draw, Sushil, you can probably start presenting again. The parallel I can draw is with Power Flows that you have in Microsoft. It is something very similar. So you can interface to any system, including SAP, and then actually create these notifications. Interestingly, I can have Sushil, along with the recording, share one of the links we have on our documentation. One of the tutorials we actually have is how do you create this on SAP?
Okay, thanks. Uh, there's another question, I guess we already answered. Does this work with only scanned images or spreadsheets or only PDFs?
It works with all of them. I showed you one which was a scanned image, fairly dull, not very clear, but that is also something that can be scanned and converted. The quality of the PDF would probably determine if you have some typos or some missing information in the form finally, which you can correct manually. But it works on any source. So you can actually take a picture of a paper form and simply scan it and then get it.
Okay. There is another question. How accurate is this generated form? I mean, how much manually fixing is required afterward?
But the form itself, I have seen in all the trials we've done is fairly accurate. Where some manual tweak is needed is primarily look and feel, right? You might want to rearrange it, put it in a different column, maybe change the layout a little bit. But more or less, what is scanned from the PDF and then what controls are used and how it is actually included into the form is fairly good. The LLMs are really extremely good at that job. Where you might do a little bit of work is in trying to realign it on the UI side, or maybe add some business conditions if at all. But otherwise, it's quite accurate.
And I see a comment there. I think there's a comment about the other platforms say coming soon. So yes, I guess my response, I guess, is if you are interested in perhaps using Chat GPT or Google Gemini or some other LLM, let us know and we will fast track that. That's not a problem. So yeah, just let us know if you want to do this trial on some other LLM. Okay.
Yeah,
Any
the
other questions,
advantage,
Sushil? We have a couple of minutes.
Yes,
the
yes.
advantage, Alok,
There are
just to
some.
answer what you said,
Yeah.
is all these agents, right, use the same tool set or the mechanism to actually interface with our platform. So what we've put out is an open interface to the platform, and actually any AI agent or LLM can actually leverage the same. So just like how we did the demo with Claude, we can do it with ChatGPT or Gemini even tomorrow. When we say the other platforms coming soon, it's primarily got to do with making this available in a general fashion for anybody and everybody to just download and start working with it. But the fundamental platform is already available.
Okay. There is another question. We use DocuSign templates and dynamically fill the template from Salesforce with patient data and send them for signatures. Can we achieve it with this platform?
I think these are two different solutions. If you look at DocuSign, and then, DocuSign gives you a bunch of other things, right? Not just the PDF and the signature, but the entire audit trail and I guess, the legal binding to say that a document has been signed and certified by somebody. I wouldn't put it that the Turbo Apps platform can actually do that in the same legal satisfying sense. But yes, if you have a document, you can actually send it out and then get it digitally signed by somebody else and then get it back. That is not an issue, but I'm not sure it would serve the entire legal stroke business purpose. That's the only doubt I have.
Okay. There is, I guess, related question. Okay. So there are two questions I see. One is, how licensing is required. I mean, what licensing is required? And then, how can we try ourselves? I mean, what is the infra we need to try?
I will answer the second question first. The whole thing is on the cloud, so you don't really need any infra. Just drop an email to Sushil or let us know. We can provision a sandbox tenant for you, and you can hook it up to your Claude, agent right now, and then start trying. You don't need to set up any infrastructure within your organization. The infra and the tie-in all comes when you start the integration process, because then you need to talk to maybe your SAP Cloud or your on-premise systems. That is when there are certain touch points within your organization. But just to use the platform and try it, nothing is needed from there.
Perfect. On the licensing front, this is an application to be licensed. It's a subscription model per user per month, and we can share that with you. If you're interested, just send us a note. There's another question here.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Is this something that we can create and then download as a PDF to send through DocuSign?
Yeah, like I said, that is possible. right? Because once you get the PDF, the platform that we provide not just allows you to fill forms, but there's an automatic mechanism to convert to PDFs. So once you get that PDF, yes, you can send it through DocuSign and then get it, signed and certified and filed away for your audit purpose. That is very much doable. And in fact, the whole process within DocuSign, I remember we had done a POC for a different customer. The whole integration to DocuSign was something that was done from the no-code builder. So when the form got submitted, it was automatically routed through DocuSign to the recipient. So it wasn't even a manual process.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's
let's just
possible. I
take
think,
another.
yeah, one
Let's just
last
take
question.
another 30 seconds. If anyone wants to unmute and ask question, they can just unmute. Lines are open. They can unmute and ask question. If not, we can wind up. So I'll look over to you.
All right. Thank you everyone for your time. Please take us up on our offer, send us a PDF or try our solution. Again, really enjoyed our conversation. Great questions. Thank you everyone for your time. Have a good rest of the day or night, wherever you are. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.